Outdoor Adventures podcast. It's been a while since we've been able to get in the studio. I got my buddy Chris Hayden with me.
Hello.
How we doing, Chris?
Good.
And we've got special guest Dr. Robert Scanlon. Did I say your name right?
You did. You did.
You have Dr. Rob on the book, so I already messed up
Yeah.
with your first name. But are you
Okay.
Robert officially?
I've been called worse. Whatever you
Okay.
say, I've been called worse. So.
Okay. So Dr. Scanlon sent us a copy of his book, which I'll hold up here for a second, and we'll have some links in the audio and stuff. But Surviving the Trail, and it's a Falcon's Guide book. So those yellow and black Falcon's Guides, which I've always used Falcon's Guides for various things. Like I have the Oregon rock hounding one, I have a mushrooming one. It's just when you see this book, there's just something about that
Yeah.
cover that just gives you confidence that you're reading something that was put together by a professional.
Sure.
Like if I wrote a book with my face on it, nobody's buying that. But like if you see it in black and yellow like this, you're like, okay, Falcon Guide is legitimate. But anyway, Dr. Rob is a board certified physician. He's been in practice for 20 years, probably 20 years plus. I don't know when you finished the book. But this book will tell you everything about coming back from your hiking trip, your hunting trip, your camping trip. He goes in a lot of detail, tells a lot of stories. It's really well written. We were talking before the show, and it's an impressive book. It's not a lot of pages. I'm not a big reader, but I got through it no problem, and I really enjoyed reading it. And I would do a chapter a night is how I did it. Maybe on the bigger chapters, maybe spread them out over 2 nights. But I really liked your work, Dr. Rob. So thank you for sharing it with us. Chris, you didn't finish it yet.
I haven't finished it. Well, to be fair, I'm reading several books at once.
Well, he's more of a scholar than myself.
Well,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I went to college. I did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So I actually reread the first chapter.
Hmm.
Um, if you want to speak to that, doctor, the first chapter I think directly affects me the most.
Not taking enough water,
I
probably.
never take enough water. It does something which I really like, that it starts off with several tragic stories that really puts carrying water in perspective for yourself. Because living in the West here, I mean, a lot of times when we're hunting, it's raining. Rifle elk in the West, it's terribly, like, it's dumping, and you shouldn't even be out, but you are.
All right.
It's 4 or 5 days. You don't want to burn them all. And I do a lot more hiking now in Central Oregon, the high desert.
Mhm.
And I went out to a national park. I think they call it Badlands as well. And it was 106 out. And I walked maybe 100 yards, and I realized, like, I don't have enough. I'm not going to be dumb. Because
Yeah.
they marked, I was using Onyx, and they marked where there was water troughs that they put out there. But I mean, bone dry is an understatement.
So you're hitting a lot of topics that we're going to go deeper
Sure,
on, just
absolutely.
because the way the book is written, it kind of takes you through various hazards that people will fall victim to, basically by being underprepared. And no one can really be over prepared for an outdoor adventure because you don't know what you're going to encounter, but you also can't put everything on your back either. So it's that balance of we've got to have a lot of stuff to be safe. And I think all of us, Chris and I talked about this on the way here. Oftentimes we will tell our spouse where we're going. We have enough self-confidence that, oh, we're going to be fine. It's not going to happen to us. But then it happens to very accomplished people. And there's examples of that in the book and people that just don't see it coming. And you can never be overly prepared. So, Dr. Rob, why did you write the book in the first place?
Well, I'd spent years as a hiker. So I've been a doc over 20 years. I've been a hiker over 20 years. And so obviously I'm a little interested in how people do, and and especially in the hiking community, and seeing these news headlines, week after week after week after week, and seeing people, hikers dying, being rescued, dying, rescued, and the same themes happening over and over and over again. I developed an interest in going into like wilderness medicine as just a sort of like a way to bring my professional life and what I love to do together in some way. And so I dove deeper into that, and I just, it was a moral obligation for me to be like, I understand all this stuff and I understand how to prevent it all, at least the stuff that we can control. And I felt a moral obligation to share that with whoever was willing to listen. And so I started that on Instagram, and a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, this is great! Keep going!" And you gotta write a book one day. And then I just finally pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And so how do you make a book to make an impact? And so you went after the handful of things that people die or require rescue from that occur most often that we can actually do something about. Like we can't control how bears are going to behave, or we can't control the topography, we can't control the weather, but we can control is how much water we bring, how we hydrate, how we come prepared for the weather, how we come prepare for the topography, the physical challenge that we come across, mitigating our risk for drowning when having to ford a river and things like that, and not getting lost. And so the six things that we die and require rescue from most often are dehydration, heat injury, like heat stroke and heat exhaustion, hypothermia, uh, uh, what do we got? Falling, drowning, and getting lost. And
Mhm.
so those are all the things that we can actually do something about. So I wanted to write a book that had not an ounce of bull crap in it, and no fluff, just what you got to know, and how you and so I broke down each chapter in these are the problems. And like you guys mentioned, I open each chapter with four either deaths or rescues from whatever the chapter is on, to exactly as Chris said, highlight these things happen to everyday people.
Mhm.
And then followed by the stats, followed by this is why people die and need rescue from this, and then finally go into how to treat, and finally to prevent it. And so the preventative strategies, and Chris, you mentioned in chapter number 1 is hydration strategy. And everybody's got their own little method for how much water they're going to need, et cetera. And as you alluded to, if the weather is a certain steady, temperature and et cetera, then whatever hydration strategy has worked before will probably continue to work. But things evolve. Summer comes, or you went to the high desert, and it was a completely different strategy, as you found out. And so that hydration strategy has to evolve with those changing conditions. So my book is the first book ever that I know of that has a table in there that you plug in the most important aspects that pertain to our hydration needs. You plug in those conditions, and boom, out pops how much water you're going to need. And for people who don't really understand, yet how to develop a hydration strategy, it's a great place to start, and then kind of modify. Everybody's needs are a little bit different. But off trail, many of us, a large percentage of us, don't hydrate enough off trail.
Mhm.
And so on trail, it's really difficult to guess. So I've tried to take the guesswork out of that.
So yeah, you've already got the problem. You don't drink enough in your daily life, and then you go out there and exert yourself and sweat, and you talk about all that in that chapter. And for me, it brought me back to an antelope hunt where we were in like 95-degree weather. There was a lot of fires that year, and I didn't bring adequate water. And we ended up meeting this young guy that we ended up hunting with, and he had like the dirtiest jug you've ever seen in your life with just like this much water in it. And I got to tell you, he gave it to me. And it was warm, but I was so happy to get
Yeah.
just that little bit of hydration. And that's an example that's kind of funny. That was like, I knew it was a short day trip type thing where I wasn't putting myself in life altering circumstances. But as you allude to in the book, a lot of these things start out like that, and then the next thing you know, they're in a really serious problem. And if help doesn't arrive fast enough, then it can lead to your death. I mean, it was shocking to me how fast some of those stories would go from, family out for a hike to they found them
Oh,
2 days later kind of thing.
tragic.
Yeah, very sad. and
Absolutely.
very preventable to your point. So, um,
I when I was reading that first chapter, I was trying to think about times in the past when I like, did I have enough water? And I almost never did.
yeah,
And I mean, it depends on where we're hunting. Like, if we're hunting on the Alsea or around a high mountain lake, I didn't worry about it too much because that lake ain't going anywhere
Sure.
type of thought. But there's been many times, and like you said, in our normal day-to-day life, today I drank coffee and two energy drinks. It's not
yeah,
a lot of water. You know what I'm
no,
saying?
yeah,
Americans are not only incredibly unhealthy, but you're right. We do not hydrate enough. And I'm a big guy. I weigh, let's say 250 pounds, 6'3". I require so much water.
hmm
And then the heat exhaustion, just like in my past, like how many times after reading that, like, oh yeah, I was like in the beginning of stages to where I'm gonna have a real problem
yeah.
soon.
Sure.
Well, the timing of your book for me was really good because we're planning this Snake River elk hunt, which Snake River is known as Hell's Canyon. It's in between Idaho and Oregon. It's
Right.
really steep topography. I'm watching all these YouTubes of these guys hunting chucker and we're hunting elk, and they're like shooting them off these sheer cliffs, and they're like, I'm just nervous for them the whole time I'm watching the YouTube. And so it's the time, like all those things, because you talk about fall from height as well, and there's just a lot of components that I think we take for granted that this book makes it really easy for you to like, okay, I'm going to go reread that particular chapter and make sure I'm good to go.
Sure.
We're hitting on hydration, but there's all kinds of stuff in here. I mean, you talk about each one of those things you brought up, and it's they all matter, and when
Absolutely.
they matter, right? You could get away with getting lucky once in a while, but
Yeah.
not a
Right.
good
Right.
strategy.
Yeah, and odds are that if you screw up in some area or even a couple of areas, odds are you may get away with it. But the
hmm
problem is getting away with it kind of reinforces that bad behavior,
Yeah.
and you're like, it short of like, dude, we almost died, like, double hands up and all that stuff, and laughing about it. And so you're not likely to change things if it was kind of like wound up being a kind of like a funny whatever near miss.
hmm
And so it reinforces that bad behavior. But I'm just a very analytical thinker, and it may just come down to people's personalities. So there's a lot of people who are just spontaneous, they just want to grab their crap and go,
Yeah.
and they want to think about that. They might think it takes away from it or whatever. But I'm just a more analytical thinker. I'm an ICU physician, so every decision I make all day long, I have to weigh the risks, the benefits, and the alternatives of what I'm doing. Am I doing something that will benefit the situation, lead us to a better understanding of the diagnosis and a better treatment, a better outcome? Or am I just doing this just to satisfy curiosity? I'm wasting everybody's time, and I might actually cause the patient more harm than benefit, that kind of thing. And so I'm constantly analyzing my next step and questioning myself on the decisions I've made because I just want to make it the right thing. So I just take that to the rest of my life. And I don't think being an analytical thinker has deprived me of any experiences or anything else. And so, but if I nail down these things that I've outlined in this book, I mean, unless like a mountain lion comes and eats me, which you can't prevent anyway, I know pretty much I'm getting home. And
Yeah.
so, and I want that. I want that for everyone.
Mm.
I'm really glad we stumbled upon one another, because until you guys, it's really been the predominantly hiking community that I've been communicating with, but it really does apply to the hunting community, and
Oh
and
yeah.
it's extraordinarily important because usually you guys aren't out there for just one day. And so the hydration strategies Chris alluded to is, if there's water out in the field, you got to, you obviously cannot bring enough water for 2, 3, whatever days you're going to be out
hmm
there, so you got to have a way to collect, to purify, and kind of strategize your route so that you intersect with water sources along the way. So you can, if we're still talking about hydration right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you mentioned this in the book, but all rely on these apps on our phone that will ticket places. And the app that hunters often use is called Onyx, which I think
Yep.
hikers probably use it too, right?
Yep.
And it'll tell you where the water sources are supposed to be, but they may not be there. And I know hunters that, oh, I know there's a spring over there, and I'll find that spring. Well, that spring could have dried up, or the topography
Yeah.
changed, or there's a giant log across it, or something to where you can't access that water, and you didn't bring enough. Then you're really in trouble.
Right.
When we were grouse hunting,
Mm-hmm.
we actually were. I did this. I marked where there was a little waterfall and when we were there. So at least I know, like maybe if I'm up here, like there might be a chance.
Yeah, there's a chance,
There's a
but then you're
chance.
going to end up with beaver fever if you don't have the proper
Well,
filtration, or there's all kinds of things that can.
there it is.
So when you were writing the book, just so listeners get an idea of just the process of writing it. So what's the timeline that it took you to write the book?
Interesting. From beginning till when I presented the manuscript to my agent, it was about 18 months of writing. But the original manuscript was actually 15 chapters long.
Hmm.
And so we set aside a bunch of chapters, and so my agent wanted to just really have a core of, but it was actually 9 chapters that connected into the 5 that we have. And I had did it. I arranged them differently. I did, kind of problem and then solution, with 2 chapters. Chapter 1 problem, chapter 2 would be chapter 1's solution, and so we just combined the problem solution ones into 5 chapters. But I've got enough, so I probably could have done it in about a year
Hmm.
had I known to really narrow it down. But and then once we went out to publishers and connected with Falcon Guides, then it was probably a good 6 months from there until we started seeing the final product.
It seems like a real logical fit with Falcon Guides to me. I didn't know that that's what you were sending me when you sent it to me. And then when I got it, I was like, oh, this is a familiar item that I recognized that makes sense for the space.
Yes, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that was a good choice. So let's hear a little bit about you. So as far as your hiking adventures, I believe in the book you talked about Mount Kilimanjaro and then maybe base camp in Everest. And I've had a guest on here that's done both the base camp to Everest and Kilimanjaro. And so, I mean, obviously those are like the big time, like bucket list type of hikes, but I'm assuming that you're doing all kinds of other type of hiking as well.
Yeah, I'm not so much a trophy chaser. I went to Kilimanjaro just because when you do these, you need people, unless
Mm,
you really enjoy going solo. And so at the time, I had really nobody to connect with, to go hiking with, and he was like, "Yeah, I really want to do Kilimanjaro." I'm like, all right, fine. But there's so many places in the United States I still have yet to go to, so it almost seems
mm,
irresponsible to keep going abroad. And when
mm-hmm.
there's such gold here in the United States, and I was telling you guys before, I've not been to the Pacific Northwest. The closest I've been is Idaho, but done Idaho and multiple spots in Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona. Yeah, a lot. And still not a lot of places in Arizona. I still need to do Grand Canyon. Still need to do Flagstaff, but it's more Phoenix and Sedona area. I'm actually from the East Coast, so I've done lots of spots on the AT, and so but I want to fill in these gaps. As a doc, you don't get a lot of time off, so I'm having to where my wife wants to go, I got to do these things, and I get my little bit of time that I can go off and do my stuff. So, but I want to do more 14ers in Colorado, but I definitely need to get up to the P&W.
Yeah, we would love to have you out here. The Pacific Crest Trail is pretty inviting, I think. And
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
my brother has always wanted to hike sections of it, and we never have. So it'd be a good excuse if we talk you into coming out to see
Right,
us.
right.
But no, I mean, and the whole point of the book is let's get out there and enjoy these beautiful outdoor experiences
Yes.
without, to your point when we first started talking, so that you're coming home. I mean, there's something very satisfying about knowing that, okay, I've crossed every T, I've dotted every I. I know that I'm going to get home after this, and I still get that magical experience, but I don't have to put myself in harm's way. I did notice, and I had an ear tag, but Chris, you took my ear tag away.
It was on the
Uh,
last page.
no, that was just a business card
Oh,
from that
was
guy.
it? Okay.
But no, I had an ear tag because I was going to bring up the stat, but like in Oregon, there was a lot. Like I wanted to, you might know the stat off the top of your head, maybe you don't, but it was something like 200 and some hikers go missing per year or something like that, or maybe it was like 180. I don't remember the stat, but
It's actually a 350.
oh,
So,
okay, so it's
Yeah.
way higher than what I
Even
so,
remembered. Yeah,
yeah, so there's a 17-year data set from your state, and
hmm
it worked out to be about 350, so about one person per day.
that's what it was. Because in my mind, I was going, it was two people, like one every 2 days was where my mind was
Yeah.
going. But yeah, that's where my stat was at. But yeah, that's almost 1%, and that was reported because a
Right,
lot of people get lost temporarily.
right,
And so they never turn that in because they make it back on their own or somebody finds them or whatever. But these were
exactly.
so I mean, you talk about it in the book about the burden, the search and rescue people have to
Oh,
experience, and then they're putting themselves in harm's way. I just saw a news article, or it was like the news was on in the background at the gym, and we just lost somebody on Mount Hood here recently that I believe was also a fall situation, and
Yes.
that was within the last 2 or 3 weeks. And Mount Hood's just dangerous this time because there's just not much snow. So it's actually with all the snow melt and stuff, everything's a little different, and there's these big I don't know what they call them, but it's basically like a big hole in the snow that you can fall into,
Sure,
you know?
crevasse.
Yeah,
oh my
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
probably.
I
God.
thought about I was gonna climb that at the end of the year with one of my buddies, and he talked about like maybe we wait wait
Yeah,
a whole nother year, because when you do it in the winter, it's actually a lot safer.
yeah, which is counterintuitive.
Sure.
And people are like, oh, no snow, maybe I can actually climb it this year. But then the conditions are all different. And
It's actually pretty challenging climb.
yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit as far as, do you want to bring up the story from your hometown? This is also
Well,
a
yeah,
recent thing.
yeah, and it's weird. It's a strange timing, like we were talking about before the podcast, because um, when I had a kid, my wife asked me to stop doing reckless outdoor things, which I understood, right? It makes sense. And then when we lost that guy from my hometown, she made me buy an InReach
Hmm.
just for purely for safety. But my dad was a fireman. My dad was a hunter for many decades, and I've hunted a lot and been all over. And we've kind of been in that area, and we were talking about it. And that's what my dad thought had happened to him was a fall.
Hmm.
And we had talked about it on the podcast. But then when we got the book, something I want you to talk about, Doctor, is um, the speed in which, like, how quickly you gain speed falling down a hill was
Oh,
very
yeah.
shocking to me.
Yes, I
Yes.
remember reading that and
In
being
this book,
shocked
and
by that.
about how after a,
And the height, the,
after a
the
certain
higher.
after a certain height and a certain speed, basically it's an act of God that you survive.
Right.
A complete miracle. Which, we've all seen stories of us. One recently, I watched a woman shoot never open skydiving, and she hit trees in a fresh tilled ground,
Mhm.
and she basically walked away.
Wow.
Right,
Which is
right, right.
which is like so happy for her.
Yeah, but it
That,
shouldn't happen.
but it should that
Right.
shouldn't. You should
Try
be.
that. Try that a second time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no
exactly
kidding.
right. So when I
Yeah.
read that, I was like, we hear about people falling all the time, either hiking or, sheep hunters die. That's a common way that hunters die. That if you were to die when you were sheep hunting,
Mhm.
you're out on that shale.
Yeah, that shaly rock
Oh my
surface
God, that
gets a
stuff
lot of
is. If
people
you've never
because
been
you've
in
got height and
shale,
and you just lose your
I've
balance.
gone.
I mean, all of us have lost our balance and had that close call
Oh yeah,
where it's like, oh man, that almost could have been really
yeah.
bad, even
Besides,
if you've got everything to help you. And
exactly, and also too, you just don't know. But besides um, the lack of carrying water, the next thing for me that I read in the book that was like that had kind of happened to me a little bit, or it's happened to people I've known, is that little slip,
Mhm.
and the whole falling is way more terrifying to me. So if you could speak on that a little bit, Doctor, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, so falling is one of the big six, and happens so often. And so certainly, there's a certain percentage of it is just people doing really like stuff they shouldn't be doing on the edges of cliffs. And there's a couple of examples of, one being the 18-year-old kid and, doing some like handstand or something like that on the edges. I mean, come on. But it happens all the time, or people going over the guardrail at I forget if it's Vernal Falls or Nevada Falls in Yosemite, and going in the water and just going right over the falls, and multiple people dying in the same day, and just bad behavior. I did highlight one. I featured actually one guy. His name is Clint McHale. I connected with his sister on Instagram, and she was very gracious about sharing his story. But he and his friend were going up Camelback Mountain in Scottsdale. It's a very, very common place for people to hike around Phoenix. And I guess they had done it enough times. They were bored on the usual route, and they went off trail to try and limit, up, to I guess in a section of that, and Clint slipped, and he fell, I think, 75 feet. And he was alive when the rescuers got to him, which took, I think, about 45 minutes to really, get the copters in there and the rescuers in there. But he died in the helicopter on the way to the hospital. But the stats on the falling, so it only takes 20 feet to cause major trauma. So 20 feet is like, it's, you get up on a 6-foot ladder and it looks like you're looking down from Everest. But 20 feet isn't a terrible height. It's not a lot to ask for topography wise out there. And falling from just 20 feet will buy you a ticket to a major trauma center, because there's probably pelvic fractures, femur fractures, and if you happen to fall on your head, well, that's game over. And so it all depends on how you fall and where you impact. And so there's a lot of a breakdown on that. But yeah, Chris, you're right. I forget the numbers now. I should have been like thumbing through the book looking for that miles per hour
Yeah.
thing. But
Yeah, you
falling in.
had a formula in here, I think, where you explain it. Yeah, it was just unreal.
Well, we talked about it like 3 or 4 separate occasions about
Yeah.
how, like,
Right.
golly, that seems
Yeah, I
really
think you reach
fast,
something
man.
like 75 miles an hour if you drop like
Yeah.
60 feet
So
or
here it
something.
is from your book, page 124. So it says an average sized person who falls 60 feet will reach 42 miles per hour upon impact. And from about 90 feet, that person will accelerate to about 75 miles per hour
From
before hitting the
gravity.
ground.
That
So
was
yeah,
75.
Gravity,
yeah,
huh?
Right,
that's
and it
unreal.
right. So they say, it's not the fall that kills you; it's the sudden stop.
Sure.
Mhm.
And so you hit flat ground, and all your organs just they keep going inside your body with that
Mhm.
momentum until the blood vessels, the nerves, everything else fractures from its normal anatomical position. Certainly, bones will break, and then you're going to suffer. Now, people can fall and when it's an angled slope, and and people being able to walk away from heights like that because of the angle of slope that they hit, rather than
Mm.
flat rocky surface. Maybe it's just like a muddy or dirt angle, and they just roll down the hill and they maybe break an arm or something like that, or screw up a shoulder, but they can maybe get out of that in one piece.
So if you're falling, you find yourself falling, look for an angled landing location, possibly.
aim,
Well,
You
aim
know,
for that.
yeah,
I always worried about, like, where we hunting a lot here in Western Oregon. Things are starting to become more overgrown,
hmm
and maybe you haven't been down that road before, or what the trail. Sometimes it's hard to tell where that edge is,
yeah.
and then I always worry about, like, are you even going to be able to get out because you don't know what it's like at the bottom of
No,
that.
and you step sometimes into what you think is solid
Oh
ground,
my
and
God.
it's just a bush that's grown over airspace, and then you're like, oh, that's a 3 foot hole, or even like over east stepping in a badger hole. I mean,
Sure.
some of those badger holes or coyote dens. I mean, they're 3 or 4 feet deep,
Yeah.
and you don't see them coming, and yeah. I mean, you're not going to die from that, but it's
It's gonna
still,
hurt like hell.
yeah, or you're going to break an ankle.
Well, yeah, break it. I worry about that's actually one of my things. Like, because I go by myself a lot,
Hmm.
and I'm like, man, if I get hurt out here, I'm in trouble. Now with the inReach, I'm not too worried about it, but especially when I first started going by myself, it
But
was
someone still has to get to you,
well, that's
you know? I
exactly
mean,
right. Yeah.
yeah, I read a story, and I think it was a guy on Steve Bernella's podcast, but he had gotten attacked by a bear, and his wife was in the car with the dogs because they were being responsible and didn't take the dogs on the trail, kind of thing. And he was able to make contact with her for a little bit, but then he lost cell phone service, and I don't remember the whole story. The guy ends up surviving, but they couldn't find him, you know, and he was right within a reasonable distance to where she was at, you know, and it's amazing how dense things are and how it becomes a needle in a haystack when you're that person they're trying to find. And they have a few basic things of getting you, but
Sure.
it's not a perfect science. And like you also allude to in the book is, you know, you drop that in reach in the creek or it breaks on a rock or when you fall, it gets broken or displaced from you.
Or what if
It's
your
not going to do
arm
you
is
any
broke,
good at
like you
that
can't
point,
reach it,
you
your
know?
arm's broke or
Yeah.
something like that.
And I know we're talking like extreme because the other part that was very like you also talked about heat and heat stroke and things like that. And like that's something that I don't think I think about until I was reading it in your book is like lack of shade being such a big deal. You know, and we don't, I mean, Oregon's a relatively cool climate. We get a lot of rain, you know, and there's a lot of trees. So we typically kind of take that shade for granted. But there are desert spaces here too, and people that go out underprepared. And even if you've got some water, but you don't have a way to shade yourself from extreme weather, how I was shocked how devastating and how fast that could happen to folks too. So,
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, no, I've done you know, some desert hiking in Arizona, and so my biggest tip for that is, you know, go early in the morning, you know, before the sun, you know, certainly gets overhead. When the sun's, you know, late morning to early afternoon, sun's overhead, so there's virtually no opportunity for shade. But if you go out at 8 in the morning, the sun is coming at such an angle where you can just just dip behind a rock, you know, a 6 foot rock, and you got yourself some instant shade. But plus you're not hitting the max of the temp of the day. But sometimes, you know, you got to drive a distance just to get out there, and you don't may not have a chance to go that early or what have you. So there's different factors that will affect that. But yes, in the temperature maintenance chapter, which takes hypothermia and heat injury together, I did outline there's a family in August of 21, a husband, a wife, a baby, and their dog that were found deceased in the Sierra Nevadas. And one, you know, of the numerous things that they were deficient in, the husband had previously been there years back, but didn't realize that brush fire had pretty much decimated the canopy that they would have had available for shade. And then on top of that, they didn't have enough water for even one of them
mm,
for the conditions, and let alone the two adults, the baby and the dog. And
wow.
so I remembered, you know, following that story for the longest time. I was like, oh my God. And they thought it was like maybe an algae bloom from a nearby lake or something like that. And they looked at all kinds of different things, but no, it was just multiple wrong things to do.
And it's so tragic, yeah.
Yeah.
But the hypothermia one, we always think about hypothermia. That's the one that I think hunters in particular, because we've all been cold out there and we've all been wet out there, at least in Oregon. And
Yeah.
so we're used to being cold. And so I think we're very vigilant about hypothermia, at least my hunting party is. Like we're always thinking about it. And if somebody got wet, you know, getting the fire going, all that kind of thing. But I don't ever think about the heat side, you
I
know, and it to me almost can devastate you faster. I mean, I know hypothermia is also very serious, but I just feel like usually you can kind of maybe get out of it faster. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but
I think I'm just used to the cold more. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Hunting and fishing. But this is a related but unrelated. But I would go to the meetings at the fire department with my old man, And I remember this got me around that time I started hunting. Was a gentleman in the Midwest. Maybe he was homeless. I don't remember that aspect of it. Got into a boxcar to get out of the wind, and he had laced his boots up so tight that he ended up losing his feet to frostbite. It was so cold, and
Oh my God.
that stuck with me my whole life, was not to lace
Not
them.
to get
Well,
cold
it was
too.
obviously an
Yeah.
extreme situation, and
Yeah.
I was a young kid when I mean, I watched all the videos and stories. That's just part of it, but that always kind of stuck with me, is to watch your circulation, even when I was young, like to really be kind of forward thinking. So, like when I go winter steelhead fishing, something that I didn't used to do, but I keep my wading boots in the back of my truck. I never bring them in, so they're kind of cold. So it's not so shocking to my body, and
Hmm.
I'll wear them around a little bit before I go get in that water. So there's a slow transition into being me cold, instead of my warm body jumping into that freezing water where
Yeah.
it shocks me so much. And once I started making that move, it was like I had a much better time, you know.
And I do think everybody thinks about the cold, but we don't think about the heat side.
No, the heat,
I enjoyed reading that part just because it was like, man, I don't think about that, you
sure.
know?
Right.
And because we're not around that, and I think if I were to go to somewhere like Arizona, that wouldn't be forward thinking.
Yeah, that's where you get yourself in trouble. You
That's
go
where you get in trouble.
somewhere you're not used to. So like you and I feel pretty comfortable in the woods around here. Yeah, we still probably do some things we shouldn't do,
Sure.
and hopefully this book has helped us be a little smarter. But if we went somewhere else, we would think those same rules and things apply if we didn't do our homework properly.
Yes.
And then you're underprepared and you either don't have enough layers or enough ways to cool off or hydrate or whatever. And
Right.
it's
Right.
just it's amazing how common it is. Um,
I was going to ask you, Doctor, have you ever ran into anyone on the trail that was going through that kind of heat exhaustion, dehydration?
I have not. I have not, and I'm always looking. I'm
Yeah, oh, I bet.
always, I'm always like, I'm that guy. I always say, hey, how you doing? And yes, to be friendly, but I'm assessing. And
Yeah.
and so in the book there are the signs of heat injury, hypothermia, and even dehydration. And actually, they're all quite similar, actually.
Yes.
And it starts off with, it's just something's off with Tom over there. It's just not as sharp. Like wasn't quite oriented to where we are. Or, he forgot that we passed that lake, and that stupid guy with the red pants. Whatever. Or he's getting cranky, or Tom's falling behind. He's usually right in the lead of he's the leader of the pack. Usually he's the strongest hiker here, and he's behind, like different things like that. So performance, mental performance, and that's usually the first clue that something's wrong. And just apply that to the situation. It's not hot, it's not cold. Tom, did you drink? Or are you bonking? Maybe did you eat today? Or different stuff like that. Interesting. I went hiking in Utah with my son, and we went out, and we were about a mile and a half in, and he's not a breakfast eater. And I wake up like a bear out of hibernation, and I got calories, and he's just like nothing till like noon. He's just him. And I knew he hadn't eaten or anything else, and he was just like dogging it. And I was like, dude, sit here. I handed him like a couple of snacks, and drink all this. I put electrolytes in the water. I said, drink all this, eat all this, and then and I sat him in shade. Thank God we had it. And then he was good to go after that. So I guess technically I have run into it, but not
Yeah.
not not somebody unrelated to me, at least.
you would be the guy I'd want as my wingman out there, that's for
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah, because he not even if you put yourself in a bad spot, he could probably patch you up.
Yeah.
Like you.
Well,
Exactly.
do you find that people out on the trail do not carry enough first aid equipment?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm the guy at the trailhead just shaking my head. People getting on there with flip flops and nothing, like maybe a Dasani in their hands. Nothing against the water company or anything, but they got like a 12 ouncer, and I know this loop is 5 miles or something like that, and it's 90 degrees out, and I'm like, oh my God. And or a couple that's toting their 2-year-old behind them, and there's not a pack, not water or anything else amongst them, and I see it more often than not, actually. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's more the norm.
right. I mean, I don't think, I like to think that it's not a ignoring, trying to go against the grain or anything like that. I think it's honestly a lot of people just don't know what they don't know,
Mhm.
and we've become coddled by our societal conveniences. If I'm going about my day, I'm driving. I mentioned in the book too. If you're just driving along, you're thirsty. There's like a dozen places in the next 100 yards that I could stop and get water.
Yeah,
Um, and it wasn't that way when I was a kid. I won't give you away my age, but I'm old enough where convenience stores were not that terribly conveniently located when I
Mhm.
when I was a kid. So if you were going out on a drive, you had to anticipate, I'm going to get thirsty at some point. I'm going to get hungry at
hmm
some point. Let me pack a sandwich. Let me bring a thermos or whatever. And nowadays it's just terribly convenient that we don't have to anticipate our needs until it's in real time.
yeah,
So I think that's perhaps part of the issue. And
hmm
and certainly not, people who are onboarding into the hiking or hunting world may not realize that, and don't have that anticipation built in,
yeah.
and not having gone on that 5-hour car ride with your parents and starved to death, on the way to grandma's house or something, and so
Yeah.
you live and you learn, but you certainly don't want to learn the hard way out there.
Well, and we carry these supercomputers in our pockets, and I think a lot of people hop in their rig, say, "Hey, we're going to go hike Smith Rock today." They tell their supercomputer the directions to get there.
Yep.
They've planned nothing. Maybe they stop at a convenience store and grab a couple bottles of water, hopefully, maybe some sunscreen or whatever. And then, they realize it's they've seen it on Facebook or they've seen it on Instagram and seen how beautiful it is, but they don't, the problem with, I think, the social media influence too is it makes everything so accessible and people see it and they're just like, wow, that's so beautiful. I want to be that guy in that picture. But they don't necessarily see the behind the scenes that goes into being the guy that took the picture.
Right.
Or to your point with the whole falling stuff, it's like they want that really cool picture and then they get too close to the edge and, then that's the last picture they get to
Yeah,
take. So,
Right.
Instagram and social media hides, I think, how remote some of these places actually are,
mhm.
how dangerous it is
Yeah,
to be
Right.
they
out
think they
Right.
can
there.
get out of their car, walk a quarter of a mile, snap that beautiful
Sure.
photo,
Yeah.
get back to the car, have their water. And I
Right.
mean, had some friends that I'm sure were very careful, but they were just recently at an area with some really strong rapids, and they were taking all these photos with these fairly young kids. And I'm sure it was a very safe situation. I have
Yeah.
no judgment on them, but I still, in my mind, just as someone who's thinking, man, because kids are drawn to something cool and like bubbling water and things like that. You're like, how fast, a kid could head for the water, just those kinds of things. So,
Oh my God. Yeah, that
yeah,
deep enough and fast enough. Yeah, it'll take a kid right downstream, and chances are you
Yeah.
won't see him again.
yeah, it's just unreal.
Uh,
And we all want to give our kids and family experiences, but you have to do it and I know freak accidents happen even if you are really prepared, but it's eliminating as many of those variables as you can just makes sense. It's just smart. We're at a place where we have a book like this that we can turn to, and there's all these resources that'll keep you from putting yourself in that bad spot. But I think so many people just don't go there,
yeah.
you know?
Right, right, right. So I'm,
Uh,
through forums like this, I'm trying to open people's eyes and to at least get people on board with that thought process again. To get back to, let me square myself away. So I got my water down, my calories down. It's going to rain later probably, so I got gear for that and this, that, and the other thing. Cool. Now I can just enjoy the experience and just react to whatever. and I don't have to worry about not getting back, or even think about that, because I got it down. And
Mhm.
so I want to try to empower people to know that they are in complete control of the situation. You can control your ability to get back home when you plan
Mhm.
to, and so I want people to take ownership of that and
Yeah.
use that, and that's a really powerful thing, rather than leave it up to the whims of nature.
Yeah. Because nature is cruel. Like we
Yeah,
know, it's
Yeah.
beautiful, but it's also very cruel, and it doesn't care that you didn't prepare.
right, right.
So
Uh, Doctor, you want to talk about land navigation a little bit? Sam and I were talking, I think, today about how uh,
complicated. It's complicated because
it
I
is.
told him I took a backpacking map and compass class, and we did a couple infield trips where we were out in the woods overnight, and they were smaller hikes, like 5 to 7 miles probably. And we were just using all those tools. And man, when you're in the moment, I had it dialed. All my stuff was figured, and you think it's a skill set you're going to keep forever, but then you go rely on onyx. And even my dad, when we were first hunting, he would always have just a simple compass with him, and he would take a north bearing, and he would pick a couple pieces of topography and taller trees and snags and mountains, and just give us kids like, okay, we're headed this way in general. Now I know it's not perfect because of the whole true north and magnetic north and all that, but if you got screwed up and you could get yourself back to this snag, our camp is right here. But then you get out there and everything looks the same if you get
Sure.
too far away. But I mean, it was still giving us a basic idea of how to navigate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you need to
yeah.
keep up on it. It's one of those skills that diminishes so quickly. And I find like I was looking in my pack, I don't even have a compass in it.
Mm-hmm. Because you've relied on the
I've relied
electronic
on the
version.
electronics so
Yeah,
much.
and he
And
talks about that in there.
yeah,
But
and we were hunting
Yeah,
one
yeah.
time, my cousin that you met today, we were hunting, we got, I guess, turned around. I'm not like lost, but it was this place that we never hunted before. And one of the guys we were with said, "No, I know the truck's this way." And my cousin, to his credit, said, "No, we're going to trust the machine. What this tells us, we're going to
you
trust."
guys keep talking. I got to go grab a plug for the laptop. It's going to die, and I
Oh,
forgot
is
to
it?
bring it in. Yeah, you guys keep talking though.
How often do you see that people like? I always wonder.
It's perfect timing with the electronic
It
device
is, yeah. I'm
conversation.
actually gonna ask some of my other buddies on how well they can use a compass because after I read this portion of your book, I was like, I'm in trouble here a little bit.
Yes, that is also sort of like the dying art is to use the analog stuff, and I firmly believe the outdoors is a place where batteries go to die, and they will, you're out there long enough, and hey, we're in the information age. I get it. I bring a phone with me too. But if you're going to use electronics for your navigation, at least have a bulletproof battery bank with you. Now your phone, it may not be waterproof. The battery bank may not be 100% waterproof, but that would at least ensure that your batteries will last. They'll go the distance. But as Sam was saying, things drop off cliffs, off into rivers, into wherever, and you may not ever see them again. And now what do you do? So what I've outlined in this basic land navigation chapter is just the handful of skills that can get you to and from where you need to go. The big, the in-depth land navigation courses go way further in depth than I have. And as you guys know, the Army field manuals, it's like 260 pages, something like that. So I mean, just entire texts on the subject. But what do you need to get back to the trailhead? And so really, I've just outlined the handful of skills that can get you to and from. But you are absolutely right; these are perishable skills, and they should be practiced every time we're out. And so
Hmm.
that's how we get ourselves better at it. And so getting that concept of true north versus magnetic north, and certainly in the PNW, it makes way more of a difference than it does, say, in the Midwest. Is the magnetic north is off like something like 18 to 24
Hmm.
degrees from true north. So if you go off on the wrong bearing, you're done, over
Yeah.
distance. In the Midwest, it might be a 0.5% or 1%. You might not, you might go off a little bit, but you can see, you're basically in the same spot, and then, in the grand scheme of things. So there's a lot less room for error in the top corners of the United States, and so that's probably a great skill for folks who are in the PNW to really nail down. It's not terribly difficult. It's just practice, 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 and kind of getting that, understanding the map, that, looking at the map and seeing it as for what it is. And my practice is, I will download an electronic app, but I use that as a secondary. My primary is the analog, and I will start out, and I will fold up the map so that it has the entirety or the majority of the where I'm going to be on me. Like I'll just pull it out of my pocket and boom, there it is. I don't have to unfold it and be like, all right, where am I gonna, so I just
Hmm.
pull it out and boom. And I usually do a highlighter on the trail that I'm supposed to go on, so it's easier to see. And then so I look for stuff that's along the trail. Is there a sharp? Oh yeah, look at that. There's a sharp left turn at, looks like 2.5 miles in, and then along the trail you can see on the mile markers there. All right, so about 2.5 miles in, it makes a sharp left turn. All right, so I'm going to look for that sharp left turn, and then a mile after that, then there's a Y. Then I got to make a right. Okay, so I use those as kind of points at which I've got to look out for, and along the way, I'm like, oh, here's a left turn. All right, so I'm looking down the map. There it is. All right, so I've been here, and I go straight for about a mile, and I'm going at, about 2.6 miles an hour. So I'll get there in, roughly 20 minutes or so. And then I'm going to come to a Y, and I'm going to know to make a right. And I haven't even taken my compass out yet. And so I can usually go with the map almost in its entirety, but I will turn the map such that where I'm going straight and the trail's in front of me, so too is the trail on the map. So I'm turning the map so that the trail is in front of me as on the map as well as on the ground. And
Yeah,
so I
you're
will
orienting yourself with the map.
exactly, exactly. So
Hmm.
I'll turn it and be like, okay, so after that Y, there's going to be a small stream. It's going to follow the trail for, a good half mile. All right, so I'll use that as a reference for, if I don't see that after the Y, then I've done something wrong. And just always in the moment, always present. Like, all right, so in always checking for those little landmarks that will reinforce where I am. And if I just go off and I don't know where I'm at. I know where I was last because I was studying that map at every turn, or every so often. I'm like, all right, I know I was there. I certainly haven't seen this yet, so I gotta be in this area. And then comes my compass. And
Hmm.
so, all right, so there's a cliff to the west of that trail, so I know I'm not west. So I got to be east. So I'm going to be going west. I'm just going to keep going west until I hit that trail. And so different things like that. And so that's my usual practice. And I find it fun to do. Some people might find that laborious or like, oh, I don't want that. I want to look at, because honestly, when you're out there and there's scree, there's trail, there's roots all over the trails and everything else, and you're going to trip if you're not looking down. You're going to fall on your ass. And so it's not like, oh, I'm going to get lost in the milieu and look at the birds as I'm walking. No, you're looking down so you don't fall on your ass. And
Yeah.
so while you're looking down, check out the map.
Yeah.
And that's really my standard practice. And so I've perfected it for me in that way.
I find it fun. I find it complicated
It is.
for me. Like, I mean, I do think it's fun, but when I look at all the nuances to it, even when I was taking it as a course, I was like, wow, sometimes it just is like My brain is not computing here. And we talked on the way here that I've gone on hikes with friends where I rely solely on them because they had it planned out and they're using Onyx. And I didn't ask if they had backup batteries or what the plan was. If I didn't stick with them, I would not have a clue where I was. And
Right.
sometimes we're 2, 3 miles in, and if I didn't keep up with them, I'd be in trouble. I mean, that's
Right.
just a simple example of how we get so spoiled with either the person we're going with, oh, they're going to be the expert, or the tools that they have or that we have as being, okay, we'll be fine. And there are certain areas that I hunt that I've been there enough that I know where everything's connected. So I know if I go this way, I'm going to come out at this point, and I know if I go that way, I'm going to come out at this point. And within that 5 mile square, no matter where I come out of, I know where I'm at. But that's just from being there time and time and time again, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
So.
There was another thing in land navigation which I actually kind of appreciated that you put in there, Doctor, was land navigation at night using stars, which I thought that
Yes.
was a great addition.
Yeah.
Not only is using analog for land navigation dying out, this portion at night is probably already mostly dead. I would think. I mean, I've never talked to anyone who's ever tried to do it.
Mm.
That's a real old timey sailor thing almost. They
Right.
did a
Right.
lot of it. Um, and I imagine people maybe going west. I don't know if they did it in that time frame, but I thought that was a really neat addition to the book.
Well, biblical times, right? The Bible
Well,
reference
the most
references it quite a bit.
yeah, the whole story starts there.
Yeah.
But I thought that was cool. I've done a little bit of reading on night navigation using stars in the naval sphere.
Mhm.
Which I've always been interested in. If you could speak on the night navigation a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, during the day, and I just want to, before I go to the night, the day, I'm always looking at the sun, and I do mention in there using the sun to find to find a general way, even when it's straight overhead. And so the sun is a really good tool, especially in the morning hours and the afternoon hours, as far as finding east and west, uh, and at the middle of the day north. No, so at nighttime, yeah. So using the moon, so there's different phases of the moon, and the moon will rise and fall in slightly different locations depending on the season. So if you're familiar with that. Venus is a really good planet to follow because it's the second brightest celestial body in the sky, second to the moon. And even I've found, just personally brighter than the North Star, I believe, but it's not always there. It's on
Mm.
a 9 month cycle instead of a 12-month cycle. So it's not always in the same positions, but knowing where Venus will be at that time when you're going to be hiking, just to keep in the back of your mind. But it always follows the sun, and during the day you're not able to find it, but after sundown, when we can see it in the sky, it's almost always in the western sky. And but the one constellation I go to most is Orion, and so everybody's familiar with Orion's belt,
Mhm.
but perpendicularly coming in between his legs is Orion's sword. And so it's probably a nicer version of what they could otherwise call it. But if we see Orion's sword, then that will always point south. And so it's all you need is to find one direction, and then you got it. You know where east is, you know where west is, you know where north is. Once you see Orion's sword, all right, that's south. All right, so that's north, that's east, that's west. Cool. And you know where you're
Mm.
going. That's my biggest go-to because it's right in the center of the sky most of the time. It does go, east to west, but through the night, but it's usually easily found.
So I have a question. If you find yourself in a situation, I'm shifting gears a little bit, but where you're unprepared in some capacity, and let's say you are lost and maybe you don't have enough water or you don't have enough food, I mean, food you can go quite a while without, but let's just say you're in that position. What's your biggest piece of advice for that individual?
Uh, well, use your phone to call 911. Is usually the SOS feature will actually work.
Mhm.
And going back to that family who died in the Sierra Nevadas, they tried calling friends, they tried calling family members, everybody's, but they never dialed 911. Had they
Mm.
done that, they would have been rescued.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they hadn't thought of it. I guess they were just panicked. And so the SOS feature, even when you're out of cell service, your SOS feature usually works. So if you don't have a
Mhm.
Garmin InReach, which I always take with me, and but if you are lost, you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you need to be, then stay in place and do everything you can to contact rescue, because the longer you go without the water, the more you're going to get dehydrated, the more you go, so getting lost, is the gateway to everything else. So
Mhm.
if there's one skill to nail down out of this book, it is land navigation, because you get lost, you're spending more time out there. You spend more time out there, you run out of water, you run out of calories, you run out of daylight, you run out of battery power.
Mhm.
And so when you run out of daylight, now you're exposed to whatever the weather conditions are going to be. Is it hot? You're gonna probably get overheated because you won't have the water with you probably. If
Mhm.
it's, even if you're in the desert and it was hot during the day and you're in t-shirts and shorts, maybe at night, it's going to be freezing cold, and then you're
Mhm.
going to get hypothermic. And so if you can nail down, getting not getting lost out of all of them,
Mhm.
you're probably, if you were to choose one, that's the one you want to pick. But if you're lost and you're running out of resources, find a way to get in contact with somebody.
Yeah, and most of the cell phone providers are offering satellite texting now too. I mean, it seems like the technology is improving. There's another service besides an inReach called, I think it's Zolio or something like that, but there's various services where you can always get a hold of somebody. I mean, you answered that way better than I could have. So that
Yeah,
was, yeah.
there's going to be a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing my dad always said was have matches with you because he goes, if you light a big enough fire, they'll come. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
you know,
There's some truth to that.
yeah, not that you want to go that route.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for that, as that can turn on you pretty quick too,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Uh,
While we've been talking, what I was thinking, here's what we need to do. So Chris and I went to the Sportsman Show today. It's the Northwest Sportsman Show is the biggest thing around this area for outdoorsmen. There's three buildings. All the kind of celebrity hunting YouTube type people are there. I mean, a handful of them are and that type of thing, but it's hunting and fishing. But I think we get Dr. Rob out here. We get a handful of these books. We got them on a table. He can be signing them. He can be
sure.
talking to people. I don't know how much it costs to get a booth, but so this time of
We
year,
talked about that.
you'd be the guy. He would be way more popular than us talking about our podcast.
Yeah, well,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Uh,
So were you guys, like connecting with people, and from a podcast standpoint, not just a consumer standpoint?
oh, I think a little bit.
A little bit of both.
Yeah, I
Chris booked a fishing trip.
I was I became a consumer today, but it was with someone I had. It's down in Baja. I have I went with them 2019 offshore fishing, and I'm gonna take my wife again, and my business partner and his wife, and my cousin who's a fishing guide up here.
Cool.
Some of them have not been down to Mexico. I always talk everyone's ear off about how it's a great fishing opportunity for people.
But it's just a neat show. It has
Yeah.
everybody. There's a ton of people there. So start prepping your wife now. So next February,
Yeah.
I've just been thinking about it the whole time. Like, I don't you think he sits there with this book, he would sell so many copies.
Oh, yeah, and I've been like, I really think I don't. What does this book cost, Doctor O?
It's on the
$20.
back.
Is it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's
like
nothing.
1995, I think.
That's
Something.
nothing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about something like a little bit, something I've always thought was cool? It's in the land navigation. I'm not trying to give like too much away about things that are in the
Sure,
book
sure,
'cause I
sure.
want people to read. But cairns, have you seen any out on the trails?
Yes, yes. And so, mostly out of just sort of trail art, if you will. But having hiked through Canyonlands National Park in Utah, if cairns were not there, I map or compass or not, I would have gotten lost because everything
Mm,
looks that you cannot discern trail from non-trail out there, and very easily you'll get lost. And so, and as soon as I passed one cairn, I was looking for the next one. And if I didn't see it, I'm stopping and I'm looking and I'm going off a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, because maybe something's hiding it. And we're like, oh shit, there it is. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. And then I go up to it, and then all right, so where's the next one? And so cairns have been, at least in the hiking community, a subject of scorn, and people are
hmm.
purposely knocking them over,
Right.
but
There's a huge rift right now.
they don't know if they are actually there because the park rangers put them there so that
Hmm.
people like me don't get lost, or it was just somebody who just decided to build one.
Hmm.
But if God forbid they're destroying them in Canyonlands, there's going to be a lot of lost people out there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's one of those things where people think it's taking away from the natural beauty in some ways, but they have some beauty in themselves, in my mind,
Absolutely.
and a lot of them have been there for a long time. So you've already messed with whatever dirt was around there, and with whatever organisms were relying on that as their home, or what,
Yeah,
the damage is already done once that stack is there.
sure.
Right,
So in
right.
my mind, leave
And
them alone. But
right. The Earth's going to be just fine,
yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah.
But and yeah, I think it connects us with our primal ancestors who that was, going back to Roman times and earlier, that was the only way they knew how to get around.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of, and obviously Roman times wasn't primal, but way prior to that, they didn't know to do that, and unless generations and centuries before them they were doing it, and it was just an old tried and true way to find your way through the expanse of nature. And yeah, and I don't necessarily condone building them, but if as long as they're placed along the trail, and some people will do some really interesting stuff to purposely get people off track,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
there's kind of a
that's totally not cool.
yeah,
No.
But if they're built it along the trail, I don't have a big problem with that.
sure.
Mhm.
Cairns are like a weird, like sore subject right now
Mhm.
because you
Yeah.
see like you either for them or against them. I have a friend who works for a county down in like in the San Jose area, and he will build them like he'll build them, but down by a river.
Mhm.
So he's because he just thinks they're cool. Like he'll build
Mhm.
it, take a picture of it, and then just put the rocks back like he never leaves them and stuff. So in a way, like I'm like, oh, it's cool because it's a form of art, I guess, for
Yeah.
it. Because they
Yeah.
do like it does bring something out on it. But I haven't been hiking like we don't use that here,
We
really.
rarely see them. Yeah,
I,
you do see them occasionally
yeah,
in
but
certain areas,
I
but
just don't think they're for that. I don't
mhm.
think that they're using them for marking trails like they do in some of these. Like I just don't get that perception of it, I guess. I don't know.
I've done personally it just out hunting where I know we were crossing several roads, which road nav, once you cross a few roads, especially like if you're in snow and the snow melts or something like that, it becomes more difficult to find your way back because I don't know, roads mess with you a little bit. And I'll pile a pile of sticks up against a tree by a roadside so that I'll
Mhm.
know that okay, this is the road that I'm looking. I know I'm on my way back, kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know.
We've
So
done stuff like that. Like, hey man,
yeah,
you got something in your pocket,
yeah.
like an old rifle shell. Put it right here, stick it in this tree,
Yeah, or you
and
put a little piece of cloth in a tree or something and
yeah,
hang it,
Right. I was thinking bring a roll of like orange, like the not non-stick tape, but just to wrap around the tree or something. Yeah, just a
Yeah, trail marker
yeah, yeah, yeah.
concept, you know.
How do they do trail markers in Oregon? I didn't really, not having been there, I haven't really gotten a sense of that.
It's a good question. I don't know
most
on the I've never been on the PCT, so I don't know, but as far as there, but
uh,
I
uh,
think like when you're out in private timberland, it's usually flagging. You'll
yeah.
see like pink flagging or red and white flagging that'll mark a trail that's going
Got it.
through the, area.
Well, like the
Okay.
PCT is so I don't want to say it's not played out or anything like that, but it's so popular
Mhm.
and so many
Yes.
people have been up and down that trail that I imagine in a lot. I mean, I don't know this. I haven't done any of it, but I would imagine there's some sections where you would. I mean, you know where to go. It's not a
I
secret.
mean, a lot of the trail hikes that I've done that weren't hunting related, they were very obvious trails, like
Yeah,
Silver Creek Falls, Multnomah Falls. They're very well worn, well
sure.
utilized trails with markers, like every
Guidance.
yeah, that just are like you're at the quarter mile,
Yeah.
half mile, 2.5 mile, and then there's also the signs going every which way. If you go this way, you're going to see this fall. If you go that way, you're going to see that fall, and it's this many miles away.
Not very remote.
No,
Yeah.
it's very, I would say, almost urban hiking in
Sure.
to a sense. I mean, you're still getting a sense of nature once you get out there, but it's not like that real rustic stuff, you know?
Right. So you have
So,
like actually like street signs.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
well,
yeah.
no, you're
so
not
so
wrong. I think
I,
in
I've
some
been on
ways
the
it's true.
PCT in the Lake Tahoe area, and yeah, so they'll have these like 4x4, wood, like maybe like 3.5, 4 feet high with the badge, with the PCT badge on it. And
Mm-hmm.
I would think that that would be the predominant marker through the PCT.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, what you just described sounds a lot like how Colorado does it. They have like metal signs, with etched, it's hard to destroy them, hard to mar them, hard to,
Mm-hmm.
alter them. And so it'll tell you, yeah, go this way for that trail and that way, for 5 more miles or whatever. Yeah, I really like that. It's the East Coast on the AT, and elsewhere in the East Coast, it's all just blazes. So it'll be just
Mm-hmm.
paint on a tree in different patterns, different colors. The orange trail, the white trail, the blue trail, and this that, and the other thing. And there's the orange triangle, but then you have an orange rectangle. So the other orange trail, and so it's all these intersecting trails with different colors and shapes and such. Um, but those are very easy to undo. People will,
Mm-hmm.
the paint wears,
Yeah.
and then the blazes will be, otherwise, and if they're not paint, then there'll be some reflective material or whatever. People will take them off
Mm.
just to screw people up.
God, it's
And
such
that's
a
really bad.
Very
And
unfortunate that people do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
To me,
yeah, yeah,
It's odd to me, yeah, because you're potentially putting someone in harm's way for
yeah.
no reason.
totally.
There's no
Right,
reason
right,
for
right.
it.
For
I
their
Yeah.
would
own
never.
sick entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interval at which they are distributed, because it's very difficult because there's such a canopy above the trails. Everything below it looks the same, very much like in Canyonlands. There's no canopy, but it's all just desert and everything looks the same. Under the canopy, everything looks, it's really hard to tell trail from non-trail in the AT. And so you might have like, half a mile between blazes, and then you go like 100 yards and there'll be another blade. You're like, whoa, what the hell? Like, why did I have to like guess myself for the last, half
Mhm.
mile? And then here, I, just passed the last one and I see the next one. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I believe most of our trails are pretty well marked. I believe that there's a lot of metal signs, but there's also some wooden ones, which
Yeah.
then you have the vulnerability of rot and things like that, or the sign will kind of turn a little bit different than the where it's supposed to go, and that can create some confusion. But I think for the most part, I believe a lot of our hiking trails are fairly well marked.
Yeah.
right.
So there's a trail that goes from our house in Sun River to the Deschutes.
Hmm.
So I mean, you're talking a 7-minute walk. Now, my dad made that in the 1960s when he was a kid with his friend.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
It's been there. Oh, I walk it on every time I'm there. Right?
Yeah.
I get lost on that sometimes.
Yeah.
I can sometimes you can see the house, but I'm like, I'm gonna just follow the trail. But because there's other people there or whatever, you get kind of sidetracked.
Hmm.
And every year when I'm there, I will hear my wife say, "There's someone in the backyard." And so I go out there, and they're like, "Hey, we're," because they're not from there, they're
Oh, they
vacationing.
just think it's a trail for
They think it's a
everybody.
trail, yeah.
Yeah.
Which to us, it is a trail for everybody.
Yeah.
It is. We don't care.
Yeah.
And I always tell everyone where are you looking to go? Because there's only
Mhm.
one road in and out of this place, but there's a lot of houses. And I'll explain to them, just walk along the side of the house, take a right or take a left, because people come from, I mean, all over the country and they stay in Sun River. And
Yeah.
it's easy if you haven't spent your life there.
Oh, yeah. It's very, everything looks the
It
same
looks
too. All
so
the cul-de-sacs look the same. Everything looks
well,
the
not
same.
just that, but it's like it's surrounded by national forests,
Hmm.
right? And when you get in there, they take care of it a lot. I mean, they police the debris, and that's why we don't have such a problem with forest fires in that area.
Hmm.
But if you have not spent any time there, you can get turned. Every tree looks the same.
Hmm.
Every bush looks the same. It's because there's only like four things growing.
Right.
You know, lodgepole pines and some sticky, but like it's so
Sage.
identical.
Yeah.
Sage, yeah, man. And so you can get turned around in a place like that so easy. Now, when you're there, you're not going to die.
Yeah, right. You're in a
You can
tourist
you can
destination.
throw a
Like,
rock and hit a house in
yeah,
any
yeah, you're gonna be able
direction.
to knock on a door fairly soon
I'll
if
give
you,
you a beer.
yeah,
Don't worry.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But there
So,
is nothing worse than that feeling of being lost or even turned around. I
oh,
mean, I've been in situations with my brothers and stuff where we know where we were, but for whatever reason, we would turn the wrong direction and walk 3 miles the wrong way before we realized we should have turned left instead of right. You know, I mean, I've never had that totally lost feeling. I don't, one time, but like,
yeah.
it's not a good feeling no
You
matter
get
what.
that little tiny little ember in your gut,
Yeah,
kind of like,
exactly. It's
so
going,
how's
oh
this
Yeah.
man.
how's this
Yeah.
gonna go today? Are we gonna be lost, or are we just gonna get to the pickup after dark?
Well, that's why I like that Dr. Rob, all those other problems come about after you're lost, right?
They
He brought
do.
it like really, it's if you can avoid the getting lost part, yes, being prepared in some of those other areas is important as well. But if you can avoid that, you're avoiding a lot of the
I feel
problem.
like, that's you can only be so prepared.
Yeah.
There's a section on in here for CPR. I have taken so many CPR.
Staying alive.
Staying alive. Well,
Yeah.
well, God, but I do not. I'm very fearful of having to use it in case, like when you're put on the spot, like,
Yeah.
am I going to do this right?
You don't want to
Am,
crack somebody's ribs or
am I going to
something,
save this
or
guy's
yeah.
life, or,
Doing it right, you
or
gotta.
Yeah, exactly.
well, that's
He knows better than we do.
my dad said the exact same thing.
Mm,
But again, like, you don't want to be put on the spot. And then I always wonder, like, how many of my buddies know CPR?
mm.
Do they have tourniquets? I mean, we're messing around inside animals with these Havalons and these really sharp knives and stuff,
Yeah.
and are we carrying the right medical stuff to, I mean, we all have a belt on, so that's going to save one leg. But
Mm.
again, like in the last couple of years, it's really been in the forefront of my mind. Like, am I carrying the right stuff? You know,
At least having it at base camp. Like my
so
my brother being a paramedic, he packs a pretty nice first aid kit where it's like, hey, if we had a real bad bleeder, we could do this and we could do that, and
well,
but knowing how to use the right stuff
my
too.
dad's the place that we have in Sun River. The people who own the lots next door my grandfather and their mom worked together. Right, he's my dad's age. The guy that has it now. He told me he had a big scar on his leg, and they brought a chainsaw with him hunting.
Mm.
Shot himself with a chainsaw. Had to be life flighted out of there.
Chainsaw accidents are pretty big around here, Dr.
It's
Rob.
a
We have
Dr. Rob. It's a epidemic.
it's unfortunately like I have some very smart neighbors that have been using chainsaws forever,
I know that
and then
also.
they just don't do their thing at the right time, and they nick that leg, and it's it's a scary. You don't want to be on the wrong end of a chainsaw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You know.
it's kind of something that is real common.
Yeah, it is a
It's
common
starting to
thing.
be like go away now that logging's starting to turn away. But if unless you live in the couple major cities, everyone kind of knows someone that's got a little piece missing of them from a Husqvarna or something.
So before we kind of part ways for today, and we may have you back on if you're willing to come entertain us again, because you're a much better speaker than either one of us. But do you have any like parting words of wisdom, or how can people find you out there, follow you, get a hold of the book? What's the, give us some of that.
So finding me, so on social media, I'm a little bit on Facebook, but Instagram is pretty much the only thing I can actually handle. And so I'm Dr. So Dr. underscore Rob Scanlon. And then my other account is Surviving the Trail Book on Instagram. But I usually post to both. Then I'm just trying to get the word out and such. Parting words, and you kind of like it's just reinforcing what I was just saying before that, I hope that, this discussion, hearing this and hopefully reading the book really gives people a sense that they are truly in power. They have the power to control their fate when getting out there, and so, taking that ownership. We control our finances, we control our education, our kids' social lives to a degree. We control a lot of aspects of our lives, and why relinquish the control over our safety, our return back home to Mother Nature, who will take every opportunity to exploit every deficiency you come to her with. And so take ownership of that, and and together as a community, as an outdoor adventure community, we all have to do our part to decrease the burden on our mountain rescue system. It is absolutely overloaded. And hardly anybody really cares, but at the end of the day, you really need to care, because the people who get into trouble, who from things that they could not prevent, need them to be available to come and rescue them, and not be bogged down by somebody who just again brought a 12-ounce Dasani with them on a 10-mile hike in the high desert. And so they're having to take care of them while they really should be tending to your broken femur, whatever, after having fallen out of a stand or some whatever, but stuff you couldn't have prevented. And so we need to preserve these mountain rescue system, the system altogether, because most of the mountain rescuers are actually volunteers, and they volunteer to help people, and they are becoming increasingly frustrated by people who are getting out there kind of irresponsibly, and we're losing them by attrition. They are quitting because they're just fed up, and there are less and less and less of them to come get us every year. So we need to really be mindful of them, preserving them, and preserving them for the truly important stuff out there. So so if we can take ownership of our little piece of it, and we all do that, we'll nail it. And
Yeah.
so that's my parting words.
That's very well said. And
I,
it brings me, I'll let you talk in a minute.
yeah.
Hold on. So it brings me to the part in your book where you talk about those rescuers, and they're actually putting themselves in harm's way to come in and rescue you, because they're
100%.
navigating this difficult terrain, difficult weather. They're mostly volunteers, to your point. And the unexpected, like a rattlesnake bite or a broken leg or some unexpected, is really what they're trained to go out there and rescue people from. These are things that they shouldn't have to be out in the field rescuing you from.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry,
I just
Chris. I
wanted to
cut you
ask.
off.
Well, I wanted to ask about you climbing Kilimanjaro, and how was that experience?
Fun.
Yeah, we talked about it, but never did.
It
Yeah.
was a
Go.
great experience. I actually arrived, and on day one, I lost my sense of smell and taste, and I felt like crap. So
Oh, you were a COVID casualty?
you got it. And so I climbed Kilimanjaro with COVID-19. It felt like absolute dog crap. And so I was last in the pack, because I was just trying to get to
Get
it,
there.
and so I did it. And so the hardest part for me was the last push to the summit. So we got up to the last camp, which is about 15,000 feet, and so the summit is at 19,350, I think. And so we took a nap. And so there was a lot leading up to that. And in the hypothermia section, I actually described what happened leading up to that camp, where I became hypothermic. And so read through that. But we took a nap and woke up at 11 p.m. and started the push to the summit. And so at sea level, we were all breathing about 21% oxygen. And at the summit at 19,350, it's still 21% oxygen, but the barometric pressure makes the effective oxygen content about 9%. So at 15,000, it's somewhere in the 12% ballpark, somewhere in that ballpark. And so the more you do, the less oxygen you have to work with. And so from there, we just hiking at 1.5 miles an hour. It is literally a snail's pace. But I guess compounded by the COVID-19, but so it was 7 hours straight through the night to summit at about 6 a.m. And the entire way, I was breathing as if I was in a full tilt sprint.
Mm.
I could not get my breath the entire time for 7 hours.
Wow.
And so you got to really dig deep inside when you're feeling like
Mhm.
that. And I said, well, either two things are going to happen. I'm either going to get to the summit or they're going to take my dead body off of this trail, because there is no way I'm turning around. And so and it's part foolish, but it was a dig deep inside, and
Mhm.
just push through. And so all you got is your headlamp and the person in front of you. So I was just looking, I was just matching step for step with the person in
Mm.
front of me. One more step, one more step, one more step, one more step, and you can't see anything. It's black out there, and that's all you got. It's cold. At the summit, it was like -21, something like that. It was absolutely frigid, but and everything was cold. I mean, I had like fucking 16 layers on. Sorry for my language.
Mm. No, you're
But
fine.
and I was freezing. Everything was freezing. But I was just there. Again, they're going to just drag my lifeless ass off this mountain, or I'm actually going to make it. And thankfully, I can
Uh,
say I made
do
it.
do they lead? I think if people, it's kind of well known because of all the movies and documentaries about Everest that on those 8,000 kilometer mountains. Because if I think there's 14 of those across the world, they leave the bodies there.
Yes.
Do they do that on Kilimanjaro as well, or can they get them down?
They will definitely airlift out.
Will they?
And so actually, when we were coming down from the summit, there was one group, and each group's about 14, and one group, about half of the folks went down, and so they airlifted them out in bundles, just
Mm.
to get them down to lower altitude, and they just couldn't get there. But
Crazy.
but yeah, so I don't think anybody passed away, because it's Everest Base Camp is about 17.5,
Mm.
and the summit of Kilimanjaro is 19.3. So it's not terribly far from where base camp is. But it's crazy, from Everest Base Camp to the summit. It's from 17 to 29, so it's another 12,000 feet.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
so the oxygen there is like, I don't know, 2%, 3%, something like that.
It's
It's
crazy.
been a while since I've looked at it, but it's just terribly low.
Mm.
And so the chances of dying from camp one, which is the next camp above base camp and above, extremely high, very, very
Yeah.
high. Um,
Um, have you seen that they put it on Netflix, I think, the documentary, but someone broke the record for climbing all 14 peaks
yeah, it's
um, in
crazy.
6 months and 6 days.
That individual was probably really prepared.
It was a whole team of guys from Nepal. You should watch
Right,
it,
right,
Doctor.
right.
It's
And
amazing.
I think
There's,
I did see one, and the guy was
yeah,
Nepalese.
yeah.
Mm.
And so,
They're studs.
Yeah, totally. And their genetics are just set up. And I know this is dragging on for you guys. I'm so sorry.
No.
Oh, you're
You know,
fine. Chris asked the question. It's his fault. You're
but
fine.
so in one of my wilderness medicine conferences, they took a guy from Nepal, and they brought him back to the United States for 6 months to acclimate him to sea level here. Then they put him in a hypobaric, not a hyperbaric, but a hypobaric chamber to mimic altitude, in with two guys from the United States. And so as the chamber is getting, mimicking higher and higher and higher altitude, the Americans are getting all goofy and not even talking and then passing out and everything else. And the guy from Nepal is just like, can we have lunch? It's just like
Wow.
totally chill.
That's
And
phenomenal.
so they are so well adapted to altitude through, series, just millennia of genetic adaptation,
Hmm.
that it's nothing for them. It's
Yeah.
like it's like walking around the block for us,
Mm.
and so it's like simple for them. And thank God, and they're
Yeah. That's amazing.
and
Yeah,
so
when you
this guy,
watch,
so if an American, who's living at sea level, tried to do two of those, he wouldn't have made it back home.
Mm.
Probably.
yes, when I watched the documentary, I think maybe last month, I was pumped after watching. I was like,
Yeah.
God, I just want to climb a mountain.
Yeah.
Because it's great, because it was like really, I think the previous record was like 15, like the first guy who did it without oxygen. It took him 15 years to climb a wall.
Yeah.
And then slowly throughout time, it got down to like 7 years,
It is
6.
amazing how what the human body can do.
It's
And
absolutely,
I'm
Yeah.
with you in that pushing yourself to where you know your limits are. Like you knew your limits. Yeah, you didn't expect to have a COVID-19 virus to fight against as well, but you pushed yourself, but you knew you were pushing yourself in a level that you could handle because you had trained and prepared and you were ready for that, you
Right,
know?
right, right. Yeah, certainly if I felt like, this is getting close to me being that lifeless body on here,
Mm.
I would have tapped out. That I
Yeah.
ultimately would have. But yeah, like you said, I got a sense that, this is highly uncomfortable, but it's not untenable. It's not doable. It's just,
Well,
it was a good discipline test for myself, honestly.
and I know we want to wrap things up, but there was one other question that I did want to ask you, just
Yeah.
to outside of the, so you have this high stress job, and a lot of people, maybe it's not for you because of who you are, but for most people, that's considered a high stress job.
It is.
Is the hiking and your connection to nature a release for you, or like what is your motivation to get out there? Just
Yeah,
because
actually,
we like to share that with our listeners.
that was the original thing that got me hiking. Actually, it was a hospital-based group, who would just meet, and this was when I was in New Jersey at the time. We would meet in southern part of New York State, outside of a state park that had, the AT runs through, and they had a huge labyrinth of trails there. So we'd find a different place to do every weekend, and it was exactly that. It was a way to exert, to catharsis, to bond, and be out there and do almost the exact opposite of what we do at the hospital,
Mm.
and
Yeah,
just it's
that was what
quiet.
I assumed, but I wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And my mom passed in 2019, and I carry this, miraculous medal, with me. I found in her jewelry box. It was the only thing I could take and get away with what wearing as a man. I think it was my grandfather's, actually.
Mm.
And every time I get to a summit or to that vista point, I always take it out, hold it, maybe kiss it, and just talk to my mom, which is
Wow.
another, an additional thing. She died from ALS, and I unfortunately
Mm.
was working when she passed, and I wasn't there for
Mm.
her, and so I carry a little bit of that guilt with me, and not having
Mm.
been able to time that well. And so she would think I'm crazy for what I do, but it's some way it connects me to her. And I actually
Wow.
did break down a little bit when I summited Kilimanjaro, because it was at that point when I realized this, perhaps subconsciously, I'm perhaps trying to get physically closer to her, assuming
Mm.
heaven's kind of up there. And so I kind of broke down emotionally. So it was an emotional thing. So it
Yeah.
is also that connection that came up after she passed as well. So it's
Wow.
it's an
Well,
additional thing.
thank you for sharing that. I could talk to you all night, so don't
yeah,
feel like we're trying
seriously.
to rush you, but we don't want people to like turn this off in an hour and a
Yeah.
half and don't hear these really cool stories. But
Yeah, forget
we're going to
it.
plug the book one more time. So it's Surviving the Trail, Falcon's Guide by Dr. Rob Scanlon. And honestly, you've been a pleasure to have on the show. I mean, you're way better, more well spoken than most of our content that we put out to
Yeah.
the hunting community. But I mean, just really feel honored and privileged to have you on our show, and just glad we finally made it happen. We've been talking about it for a while. I had to
Yes.
figure out some technology things. I'm not the best with technology, but we'd love to have you on it again. And if you do want to make it out this way, you got a place to stay with me or Chris, or you
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
alternate, and we'd be more than happy to host you and your family and anybody that wants to come. So it's our pleasure to have spent this time with you.
Sure.
I appreciate
So
that invite, and I will at least take you up on the. I won't burden your home with me, but I would love to meet up with you guys and hit the Oregonian trails for my first time, and perhaps make it to that show. We'll see.
yeah, I think
Uh,
that would be a good fit for you for sure.
but I really
Yeah.
truly thank you for having me on and finding the book interesting enough to share with your audience.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We appreciate everything you do. I appreciate that you wrote this with the intention of helping people too. I mean, that's the other really cool thing about it. It wasn't to make you rich. It wasn't
Yeah.
to make you famous. It was to help people survive the trail, like
Yeah.
is in the title, which is a pretty phenomenal
Real,
thing.
real
Yeah.
quick, Doctor, do you know how many copies this have sold so far?
So as of December 31st, there were almost 1,300 sold for a fall launch in an unknown author. It's
Yeah.
okay, but there's 65 million hikers out there, so
Yeah.
we got a ways to go. And
This book should be in every library. It should be on
Yeah.
every, I mean, it's a perfect Northwest book. It should be in every like store around here.
And it's
So,
not
yeah,
too big. It's
yeah, it can fit in your pack. You can take
the
it with you on the
information was
trail.
like easy for me to consume. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
no offense to your your job, but sometimes doctors when they write books, they're so
They're too,
hard. They're just too academic almost in a way for you to really for the lay person
Mhm.
to hold on to that information or imprint on them. And that's something I like. I was reading it in bed telling my wife, I'm like, listen to this crazy story,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
I think that's the good mix in the book. He's got some stories, he's got the real technical stuff, but you can go back to it and reread the stuff that feels like it's over your head at
Yeah,
the
I
moment.
like
So,
I'm gonna buy a copy.
yeah, we're going to do our best to get the word out with our little influence that we've got. But it's been great to spend some time with you. So,
likewise. I really thank you.
all right, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a
Well,
great
you
day.
have a nice rest of your evening. Thanks for spending some of it with us.
Likewise. Take care.
All
Take
right,
care of
thank
yourself.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah, I just there's a lot of things like now actually like talking to him and stuff. It's like there's so many sneaky little note things in here, or just some stuff you just don't like. I I didn't use like